Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Welcome to another update on the war in Ukraine. You are listening to The Account. Before we start the usual report, I wanted to share an interesting article with you that one of my friends from Ukraine sent to me yesterday. It is titled, Hear and Destroy: How Artificial Intelligence Helps Shoot Down Cruise Missiles in the Ukrainian Sky. An interview with the participants of the Zvook AI project, which develops radar systems for detecting enemy missiles and drones. So far, Russia has fired over 4,700 cruise missiles at Ukrainian territory since the beginning of the war. These attacks are not only aimed at the critical infrastructure, but also residential buildings, schools, and kindergartens. Many civilians have lost their lives due to these indiscriminate strikes. In order to counter these attacks and make the Ukrainian sky safe again, the air defense forces are working hard to strengthen and improve the air defense systems and to create new ones. After all, the more detection systems a defense complex contains, the more difficult it is to destroy or overcome it. One of these new systems is the Zvook AI project. It is a hardware and software complex capable of acoustically detecting cruise missiles, helicopters, drones, and fighter jets at low to medium altitudes. Currently, about 40 such complexes operate in Ukraine. It is a rather long article in Ukrainian, but I highly recommend reading it, especially if you are interested in the technical side of things. We will start our news section with the evening report by the General Staff of Ukraine. The relocation of enemy personnel and military equipment is ongoing to complete the units that have suffered losses and the formation of new units. The threat of the task of the opponent of missile strikes on objects of critical infrastructure in the depth of Ukraine remains. The opponent is focusing on defensive actions on the Kupiansk and Liman directions. In the Bakhmut and Avdiivka directions, the enemy continues to focus the main efforts of offensive actions. Confirmed fire impact on November 27th on areas of concentration of Russian occupants in the settlements of Poloi, Tokmak, and Bazan of the Zaporizhia Oblast and Lutogin in Luhansk Oblast. The enemy losses amounted to 470 people wounded. About 50 units of military equipment of different types and an ammunition warehouse were destroyed as well. And now for the main flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Today's assessment of the Institute for the Study of War mentioned the Russian claimed capture of several small villages around the city on November 27th and 28th. However, in their opinion, it does not portend an imminent Russian encirclement of Bakhmut as claimed by Russian sources. Nonetheless, the overall situation has worsened for the Ukrainian defenders. The War Translated project posted a translation of a post by the PMC Wagner corroborating this. The translation reads, "The occupation of the villages seriously fortified by the enemy is, of course, an achievement, but the encirclement of Bakhmut is still very far away. In the north of the city, the encirclement of the Ukrainian flank has not even really begun. It is important to note that now the section of the front near Bakhmut held by the Wagners is nearly the only one where the Russian army is slowly but successfully advancing." A video from inside Bakhmut was shared on social media. I will let it play while continuing the report. Geolocated imagery shows that Russian forces likely captured Ozaryanivka, a village about 15 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut. Multiple Russian sources claimed that Russian forces also captured the following locations: Kurdyumivka, 13 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut; Klishchivka, 7 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut; Adriivka, 10 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut; Zelenopilia, 13 kilometers south of Bakhmut; Pit-Horodne, 5 kilometers northeast of Bakhmut; and Spirne, 30 kilometers northeast of Bakhmut. However, so far, there is no evidence supporting these claims. Even if these claims should turn out to be true, it does not impact the Ukrainian ground lines of communications along the T0513 Bakhmut-Siversk and T0504 Bakhmut-Kostiantynivka immediately. Novoselivsk. Ukrainian forces officially liberated Novoselivsk in Luhansk Oblast. This was already reported several weeks ago, but has now been confirmed by both sides for the first time. Heavy fighting continues in the area as Russia is trying to regain lost positions. Pavlivka. The fight for the city continues. A video shared by Russian sources shows a drone attack on Ukrainian troops in southwest Pavlivka. This contradicts earlier claims that Ukraine has retreated from the city and Russia is in full control. Moving on to the UK Ministry of Defence intelligence update. Over the last 3 months, Russian forces in Ukraine have likely largely stopped deploying as battalion tactical groups, BTGs. The BTG concept has played a major part in Russian military doctrine for the last 10 years and saw battalions integrated with a full range of supporting subunits, including armor, reconnaissance, and, in a departure from usual Western practice, artillery. Several intrinsic weaknesses of the BTG concept have been exposed in the high-intensity, large-scale combat of the Ukraine war so far. BTG's relatively small allocation of combat infantry has often proved insufficient. Decentralized distribution of artillery has not allowed Russia to fully leverage its advantage in numbers of guns. And few BTG commanders have been empowered to flexibly exploit opportunities in the way the BTG model was designed to promote. And now we will switch over to the important news of the day. The City Council of Mariupol has posted a video on social media showing the situation in the occupied city. I apologize for the low quality of the video. The post reads, "This is the true appearance of Mariupol under Russian occupation. A ghost town. The Russians show new houses on propaganda television in which apartments are distributed to collaborators. But the reality of the city is completely different. Destroyed houses, broken yards, playgrounds, destroyed cars. People who survive stand in line for bread and freeze without windows or heating. This is the real life of the people of Mariupol in the city, which was turned into a ghetto, and it is impossible to hide." On top of this, Russian occupiers have started to delete demolished buildings from Mariupol maps. It is reported that so far over 50,000 apartments have already been destroyed. As a reminder, about 90% of the city was either destroyed or damaged during the Russian siege. The city is lacking power, water, and gas, while over 100,000 civilians remain there. In light of the threats posed by a potential new missile attack by Russia, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry released a statement that the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine is prepared to repel a new attack. This statement comes amid air raid sirens sounding across Ukraine after it was reported that Russian strategic bombers were airborne out of Engels Air Base. It is also reported by Reuters that the sirens went off during a meeting of NATO partners discussing further aid to Ukraine. The war will end with negotiations, but the outcome depends entirely on the battlefield. This sentiment was shared by both the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and the head of the Turkish Foreign Ministry during today's NATO meeting. Stoltenberg also emphasized that the alliance cannot allow Russia to win the war. On one hand, it would be a tragedy for the Ukrainian people, and on the other hand, would embolden other authoritarian leaders around the world to try and achieve their goals using force. To quote the NATO Secretary General, "We know that most wars end at the negotiation table, but what happens at the negotiation table is inextricably linked to what happens on the battlefield. Therefore, to create the conditions for lasting peace, which ensures that Ukraine prevails as an independent sovereign state, we must continue to provide military support to Ukraine." If we let Putin win, all of us will pay a much higher price for many years to come. Because then the lesson learned by President Putin and other authoritarian leaders is that they can achieve their goals by using brute force. So they will be emboldened to use even more force once again. That will make our world more dangerous and all of us more vulnerable. Meanwhile, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Great Britain, James Cleverly, said that Russia is trying to weaponize winter by attacking critical infrastructure in order to freeze the country and force it into submission. Funded by the German Ministry of Defense, Estonian manufacturer Milrem Robotics, and the German defense company Krauss-Maffei-Wegmann agreed to send 14 THEMIS unmanned ground vehicles to Ukraine. 7 are designed for evacuating casualties and will be delivered by the end of 2022. The other 7 will be used as route clearance vehicles and will arrive in Ukraine next year. The THEMIS is a multi-role unmanned ground vehicle which can quickly be set up for different roles in the combat zone depending on specific mission requirements. And finally, the Visegrad24 Twitter account shared an interesting infographic about the war. The post reads, "After February 24th, the Russian army took 119,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. Ukraine has now liberated 75,000 out of those 119,000 square kilometers. It shows just how bad the war is going for Russia." And that wraps up today's news report. If you want to read about individual topics in more detail, you can find links to the articles in the description. Thank you for listening in and have a great day. This was The Account. Slava Ukraini.